Good morning, thanks for joining me. I hope everybody's well today and having a good week. Today's video is a bit of a cheat because it's an old video from a few years ago that I originally filmed a few years ago, and it didn't get loads of views. It was when I had a lot less subscribers, a lot fewer subscribers, I think, than I do at the moment, and it's a really good story. And I was going back through my back catalogue. I think it's a good story anyway. I was going back through my back catalogue of videos and I thought, do you know, that one could do with another go around. So what you are about to see is me from a few years ago telling you a story from back in, I think it was 2005. I'm sure I probably say in the video, but I just wanted to introduce it separately. You will see current me again about halfway through the video, because there's a bit of footage in the middle that I haven't been able to, it got corrupted when I downloaded the video to stitch it all together with this, so a little bit is missed out. So I'll pop back in the middle to explain what was missing. So I'll see you then. I really hope you enjoy the story. Good morning, thank you for joining me. I haven't made a Storytime video for ages and ages, and yet Storytime videos are the ones that, when I get comments on previous videos, they're very often my Storytime videos that people go back and watch that still get a lot of views. So just noticed there's a mosquito on the outside of the window. It's odd, isn't it, in mid-October? Perhaps it's a small daddy long legs. Anyway, I digress. My Storytime videos are the ones that people comment on, and they're also some that I really like to film. I really enjoy talking about things that have happened to me, and I feel like perhaps they're the videos that in the future my children and grandchildren, if YouTube is still a thing in those days when I'm dead and gone, will be able to go back and watch and see things about my life. And when I said children, I only have one child, so I don't know why I said children. Oh God, it's going to be one of those distracted mornings, isn't it? It's not one of the... I feel like I'm a bit low down as well. Let me just see if I can lower you a little bit. There we are. That's more central, isn't it? Anyway, that was a load of waffle, wasn't it? So the story I'm going to tell you, I was reminded of this because Ashley and I were talking about this particular incident when we were on holiday in Greece recently, and it just reminded me, and I thought it would be a good subject to make a video about because it's an entertaining story, I guess. So let me take you back to the year 2005, and it was summer 2005. It was around the time of the 7/7 bombings in London, actually, just after that. And we went on holiday. We went on holiday to Cuba. Ashley, myself and William. William was 5 at the time. And we'd been looking forward to this holiday. And stupidly, when I look back now, I didn't have any idea that July in Cuba is in hurricane season, right in the middle of hurricane season. And I didn't know this, and I hadn't looked it up or even thought about it. It hadn't crossed my mind. Rest assured that these days, if I'm intending on going to a location where there may be a hurricane, I do check whether it's in the season, and if it is, I don't go. I have at least learnt from my mistake, I guess is how we could put this. Anyway, there it was, 2005, and we went on holiday to Cuba, and we arrived, and it's a very big resort, quite a nice hotel. We had a very nice room, and it was on the seaside, on the coast, I guess I'm trying to say. Let me just have a sip of my coffee. Ashley's just made me a cup of coffee. He never quite puts enough milk in. I don't know if you can see the colour of my coffee. I'm going to tip you so you can see it. Does that look a bit dark? Looks a bit dark to me. Tastes all right, actually. It doesn't taste as strong as it looks. Anyway, we arrived in Cuba, and we'd been there, I think it was our second full day. So we'd had our first day and sort of found our way around the resort, and it was our second full day, and we still had a bit of jet lag, so we were waking up very early. So we went off to breakfast quite early, and there was hardly anybody about, and we had breakfast, and it was quite a overcast day. The weather wasn't great, and we couldn't really decide what to do, so we finished breakfast and we headed back to our room, by which time there were more people about. And I remember commenting to Ashley, gosh, there's a lot of people going home today, so many people with suitcases heading towards reception. and he sort of agreed with me, and we didn't think any more of it, and we went back to our room for a bit, and then we decided that we would go and have a swim, although the weather was a bit rubbish. It was still very warm, so we decided that we would go down to the pool, and we went down to the pool, and again there was a lot of people around, again with suitcases, and I said, gosh, there are a lot of people going home. Didn't think too much more of it. And when we got to the pool, they had all these plastic deck chairs all floating in the pool. Obviously had been put there. All the deck chairs had been put into the pool, so we couldn't use the pool. So I thought, that's slightly odd. Anyway, so we decided to head back to our room again. And as we did, we were passing more and more people. It was quite a long walk from the pool to our room, and we were passing more and more people going in the opposite direction with suitcases. And I said to Ashley, something's not right here. This is not right. What's going on, you know? And as I sort of came to that realisation that there was something going on that wasn't quite right, with some people who had arrived on the same flight as us, a family of 4 who we'd sort of chatted to a bit on the flight, and also on the way to the hotel and at the welcome meeting the previous day. So we sort of knew them, headed towards us with suitcases and heading towards reception, and they were staying for the same amount of time as us, 2 weeks. So at that point I knew something was definitely not right, and I said, what's going on, you know? And they said, haven't you heard? Everybody's had a phone call in their room. There's a hurricane coming and we're being evacuated from the hotel and we're all being sent to Havana. And we were just horrified. We knew nothing about this hurricane, nothing about, and it was really quite frightening. So we hadn't had a phone call. Whether they'd phoned us to tell us that the hotel was closing and we were being evacuated while we were away at breakfast or something, I don't know, but we hadn't had a phone call. Everybody else seemed to have done. Anyway, we rushed back to our room. We packed up all our stuff really quickly. It was really quite frightening at that point, and we didn't know what, never having experienced a hurricane, you know, you just think about what you've seen on television, you know, buildings with their roofs being ripped off and cars being tossed across the, what am I trying to say? Tossed across the roads, you know, blown away in the wind. And of course the tsunami came into my head and all that sort of thing. So it was really quite frightening. Rushed back to our room, we packed up all our stuff really quickly. And I remember it being in the days before smartphones, but Ashley and I we both had mobile phones. And I remember saying we said to each other, just in case we get separated, we've both got our phones, you know, we'll put them in separate bags or whatever. And that was obviously going through that thought, you just don't know what's going to happen. It was really frightening. Anyway, we packed our stuff, we headed off to reception, and it was absolute bloody bedlam. They were bringing in coaches to bus us to Havana, the capital of Cuba, which was about a 4-hour drive away, and the weather was all the time getting worse. It started to rain by this point and it was quite windy. I mean, certainly not hurricane weather, but you know, the hurricane was expected to arrive in the evening, I should have said, at the worst of it, but obviously it was going to get progressively worse throughout the day. But people milling everywhere. There were sort of scuffles breaking out, people trying to get onto buses. There weren't enough buses. There was not a holiday. We were on holiday with Thompson Holidays, and there was a lot of people also with Virgin as well, and there was some Virgin reps, but not a Thompson rep to be seen in the whole place. So that was really bad, although I suppose they had a lot of hotels and everything to deal with. We were quite lucky. We managed to get on a bus fairly quickly, Ashley, William and myself. So we got on the bus and drove off to Havana. It was quite a long drive. The weather got progressively worse, although not frighteningly worse, on the way there, and nobody knew really where we were going or what was going on. We were told we were being taken to a hotel in Havana. And eventually we arrived in Havana, and it's quite a... what we saw of it, it was quite severe and communisty, as you would expect a communist capital city to look like. And we were taken to this really great big, huge concrete tower block. I think it was a Holiday Inn, I think was the brand, but very severe looking communist tower block concrete hotel, and along with lots of coaches of other people, and we were just dropped off there, and there was we were all sent up to this huge sort of conference centre, ballroom type, big public room anyway, all empty, obviously used for conferences, that sort of thing. And there were hundreds and hundreds of people milling about, and two guys sitting at a round table allocating rooms to people, and that you had to fill in a little form and then put your form on the table, and they were going through these forms, and there was a lot of, obviously all the tourists from the whole of Cuba were being brought into this hotel, or into hotels in the capital of Havana. So more and more people were arriving, and it was becoming more and more fraught, and people were stressed, and it became apparent after a couple of hours of waiting that they were filling in these forms and people were getting rooms, and there was no queuing system. Everybody was just crowding around the table where these two guys were, and the word came back from the people at the front that people were being made to share rooms with people they didn't know because they were running out of accommodation. Hello there, me again. Hope you're enjoying the story so far. This is the bit now that is corrupted, and every time I try and export the video back out to re-upload it, it just keeps crashing. So it's about 20 seconds, I think, that is missing. It's the bit where I'm talking about we were waiting to be allocated a room in the hotel, and it was there were fewer and fewer rooms, and there were rumours going around that people were being made to share rooms and things. And we were very lucky, by the skin of our teeth. Our names were called from the forms we filled in, and we were allocated a room for the three of us. So that's what's missing. Now back to the story. Off we went to reception to get the key, and only a few people after that allocation, they did indeed make people start sharing rooms with people they didn't know. One family we knew were sharing a room with two other couples, family of three and two other couples, in a double hotel bedroom. So we were very lucky to get that room. I was very grateful. Anyway, we went off to reception to get the key to this room we'd been allocated. It was on the 22nd floor. Because of the hurricane, the lifts were out of order. You weren't allowed to use the lifts. So we had to walk up 22 floors with all our luggage for 2 weeks of holiday. And that was the situation for the whole. We ended up being at the hotel for 3 days. That we had to walk up and down the 22 floors every time we went up and down to our room. Eventually, after the hurricane had passed, the lifts were working, but the hotel was so overcrowded and people were constantly in, the lifts were so full, people were cramming in, that they would stop regularly, and I couldn't deal with it. They were just over full and would break down, so we didn't use the lifts at all even after they were mended, but that was hideous. Anyway, we got our room. We carried all our luggage up 22 floors to this room, and there was nothing wrong with it. It was a perfectly fine hotel room, but what did completely freak me out was it had quite big floor-to-ceiling windows. I think I've got a photo of this, so if I can find it, I'll insert it. Quite big floor-to-ceiling windows, and they tape them when they're expecting a hurricane. They put like masking tape in big crisscrosses down the centre of the windows in case they break in the hurricane. And there were these big plate glass windows. We were sleeping in this room right next to these windows on the 22nd floor, and they were all taped, and that was a bit freaky and frightening. Anyway, the hurricane was expected that evening, and by this point it was heading towards evening, and the hotel told us that we were not allowed to stay in our rooms during the hurricane, and that they would put on, we had to go down to the big ballroom, conference room type area on the 2nd floor that was actually internal. It didn't have any outside windows at all, so we had to go in there while the hurricane was at its worst. And so we all trooped down there at about 8 o'clock in the evening, and people were making beds for their kids, you know, with towels and whatever they could find, and sort of settling in for the long haul. And they put on some food, and there was a band playing as well. It was very much what I imagine Blitz spirit in London must have been like in the underground stations. Everybody was talking to people they didn't know and sharing what they had, and you know, it was really quite a surreal experience looking back at it. But the electricity kept going on and off, which was quite freaky. It would go off and hello, it's all right. the electricity would go off, the lights would all go off, and then the generator would kick in after 30 seconds or so, so it would all come back on, and that happened a lot of times, and it was horrible. Because we're in an area of the hotel with no windows, I was in the loo at one point, and everything went off, and it was so dark. It was really freaky and just not very nice. Anyway, the hurricane came and went. The hurricane, it was very windy. I did look out at it from, you could go down to the hotel lobby and look outside. They didn't want us to go outside, obviously. It was very windy. I guess being in the centre of a city, you didn't get the worst of it. But it was very windy and rainy, and it passed over. Eventually, about 3 o'clock in the morning, we were allowed to go back to our rooms, which was lovely. It was so nice to get back to our room, and so nice that there wasn't somebody I didn't know sharing it with me. That just would have been the final straw. I should just probably say the name of the hurricane was Hurricane Dennis. It was 2005, as I said, and it caused, I can't remember the exact figure, I'll put it across the screen for you, but many millions, possibly billions pounds worth of damage, dollars worth of damage in its path across the Caribbean, including Cuba. And very sadly as well, over 89 people died, or at least 89 people are known to have died as a direct result of that hurricane. So it was bad. It was category 4, I think, which is the second highest category of hurricane. Anyway, the next morning, we didn't know what was happening. There was an emergency phone number for Thompson Holidays that they gave us on all the paperwork when we arrived to get hold of the rep in an emergency, and we were kind of in a bit of an emergency, really. We'd had no contact at all from Thompson as our tour operator. So we rang the emergency number. We were trying to avoid it because in those days, making phone calls from in foreign countries on your UK mobile, but I mean, you still have to pay outside Europe anyway, and possibly inside Europe soon, who knows. But it was really expensive, and but we did try and ring them, and the number just it rang and nobody ever answered it. So that was nice, and that went on for the whole 3 days we were there. We were being fed, we were on an all-inclusive package with Thompson. We were being fed at this hotel. They did put food on, although over the 3 days we were there, it became apparent that they were running out of food. You would see the same things being recycled meal after meal, and after we'd seen the prawns come round twice, we decided not to eat them anymore. We were being quite careful in food poisoning terms in this, you know, communist 70s style concrete block hotel. We didn't want to be getting food poisoning as well. We ended up bread and pickled onions at the end of it was what we were picking out. So yeah, that wasn't great. But we had a walk around Havana the next day. There was not loads of damage, but there were some pretty hefty trees had come down, and the buildings were pretty okay from what we saw, that we didn't walk miles and miles. But yeah, there were some big trees down in the capital. Long story short, after 3 days, we took matters into our own hands. We still couldn't get hold of Thompson Holidays. We'd had no contact from our reps. The people with Virgin had some contact, so they were told that they would be collected from the hotel at some point and taken back. But after 3 days, we phoned up the hotel that we were staying in originally, our resort hotel, and they told us they'd already been up and running again and open for all 24 hours. Nobody had told us this. So we decided that we would pay for a taxi to go back to the hotel, which we did. There were very few guests back by that point, because all the guests were waiting to be bussed back, understandably. You know, people didn't want to pay. I think it was like £120 or something the taxi cost us. And then the phone bills on top of that, trying to get in touch with Thompson, was about another 80 quid from memory. So we got back to the hotel. It was up and running and open. There were issues. They didn't have any ice because the ice machine had broken. The outside theatre had had the roof ripped off, so that was out of action. But overall, normal service was pretty much resumed over the course of the rest of our holiday. And the other guests eventually came back a day or so, or 2 days later, in the buses. So yeah, that was my holiday from hell, I guess. All my holidays. It was quite an experience, and one that I wouldn't want to repeat, if I'm perfectly honest. I'm always very careful, as I said at the beginning, to make sure I don't go anywhere in hurricane season anymore when I book my holidays. I think one thing that I really did learn from this experience was that even if you go on a package holiday, you feel like you've got some sort of protection and there's going to be someone there to look after you. And the company have a responsibility for looking after their guests. When the chips are down, they don't. There was nobody there. We had to look after ourselves. There was literally nobody there. It was not a good situation to be in. Thompson Holidays did not show themselves up in a good light. So since then, it has made me far happier to book holidays independently. I'm very happy. People quite often ask me in my holiday videos who I book holidays with, and I just go with whoever's got the best price, to be perfectly honest. Sometimes I book independently. I'll book the flights and the hotel separately myself. If I can get a good deal through a tour operator, I will. But I never expect any tour operator to have any responsibility in terms of looking after me anymore, because I know that when the chips are down and when it comes down to it, there's nobody there at the end of the emergency number. If you need to sort yourself out, it's down to you if you've got a problem. So yeah, it has made me very jaded in terms of believing that their in-resort help exists, really. I should add that after we came back, I had quite a long, lengthy, drawn-out set of discussions, let's say, with Thompson Holidays, and eventually I did get reimbursed for the taxi journey back to the hotel and for my phone bill, trying to get in touch with them. So I guess that was one good thing that came out. Tell me in the comments what your worst holiday experience has been. I'd be really interested to know. I love the whole... Did anybody watch the Holidays from Hell programme on the television? I always enjoy that when it's on. But yeah, let me know if you've had any holiday disasters over the years in your trips away. So yeah, that was my hurricane story, and thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.